How many of you are prepared for an incident like this? Get my new book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and I will teach you to think like an attacker so you can truly defend yourself. Don't just react, act. Available for pre-order now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Sheep No More. Get it.
My name is Jonathan Gillum.
And this is The Experts. This is Jonathan Gillum, and this is The Experts on Facebook Live, Twitter, and YouTube. And it's Thursday, and I'm exhausted. I was sitting here a second ago, literally while the opening was happening, and I'm like this, resting my eyes. It's been a long day. I'll tell you about it. I don't want to bore you too much with the details. There is some good stuff in the news, some interesting stuff in the news. Seems as though all those people that are legitimately looking for pedophiles and sickos, legitimately, not the Ashton Kutcher types and those people who use it to make a profit and aren't really emotionally invested in it. I'm talking about the real people that are out there searching for human traffickers, those people that are sexual abusers of children or just weirdos in general. Their days are so numbered that the people that are searching for them are finally getting a chance. So let's talk about that and some other stuff. Let's do it. How many of you are prepared for an incident like this? Get my new book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and I will teach you to think like an attacker so you can truly defend yourself. Don't just react, act. Available for pre-order now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Sheep No More. Get it. So, interesting thing here, real quick, before we even get started. I know there's a lot of prayer warriors that watch this show, and I just want to put this out there. I don't think my Uncle Freddie would be too upset about this. So I have this uncle, his name is Fred Goodall, and he thought he was a horse when he was growing up, and I think he is actually part horse because he is one of the most incredibly strong people that I've ever met, not just in body and mind, but also physically. He's just a specimen, even in his 70s. And so when I was a kid, I went and lived with his sons for a summer because my mom felt as though I needed to be around more men. So I went and lived with them for a summer. I can't go into the details of how that was, except for the fact that I definitely learned what it was like to have brothers on that farm for it was a dairy farm for 3 months. And I'm telling you what, dairy farm, hard work. 5:30 in the morning, 5:30 in the evening. It doesn't matter if there's rain. It doesn't matter if there's snow or a holiday, or it doesn't matter if you don't feel good. You got to milk those cows, because if you don't milk cows, they will die. So, yeah, it was hard work. My Uncle Freddie taught me some incredible lessons, like when they had this garden, which was about the size of a football field. At least that's what it seemed like to me at 9 years old. And he told me that that I needed to weed that garden, and I was going to do it by myself, and I needed to have it done in a week. And when he came back, if the garden wasn't weeded, I was going to get a spanking. Well, needless to say, that garden got weeded, and it looked really good. I had hay all over it, and it was all fixed up and everything. It was nice. And but I also learned a lot about hard work. His sons that were there that taught me the value of hard work and hauling hay. 9 years old. Now, this doesn't happen much in this day and age. 9 years old. This guy right here was driving a flatbed pickup, or not pickup. It was a big flatbed truck, and like a box truck, but without the box in the back, like a flatbed. Big old stick shift. I was shifting it with two hands and is driving the wheel like this while we hauled hay. I remember when I threw my cousin Dave off the top of all the bales of hay. He was like, I don't know, 5 bales of hay high, and I saw a skunk, so I hit both feet. I got to push on the clutch, so I put it. So I'm holding the clutch. It's still in first gear. The skunk goes by, and when I let on the clutch, and my foot slipped off, so it popped the clutch, and I threw him all the way off the top of the bales of hay. So anyway, massive amounts of stories and lessons learned in that 3 months. And what I failed to tell you now is that Freddie was and is a preacher. And Fred Goodall, and one of his sons also became a preacher. And both incredibly unbelievably godly men. Fred, I watched him that same year when I was 9 years old. I watched him plow a field from the time the sun came up until the time the sun went down. He was on that tractor plowing that field, and it wasn't his field. He was doing that for one of the parishioners in the church. I think they'd had an accident or they were sick or something, and he was out there plowing that entire field. I mean, this is the kind of people that I grew up around, and the incredible work ethic, the incredible spirit of giving and loving. That's the way that they were. Never heard anybody speak bad of Freddie as an adult. As a child, it was a little bit different story. He was about as rambunctious as you could get. The only person that could tame him was my grandma, Nadine Goodall, and she did a pretty good job of keeping him in line. But he's just a wild spirit. Well, anyway, Freddie unfortunately had an accident this past week. I need to talk to them before I go into the details of the accident. But he got injured pretty bad. One of his legs got injured, and so all the prayers and stuff could go out for Fred. He is an amazingly strong and capable person, a godly man, an incredible preacher, and I just pray, and I hope everybody else is praying for his full recovery. He seems to be doing, okay and right now, but he's got a long road ahead of him. And again, I'll talk to him. I don't want to give out too many details until I talk to them to make sure that it's okay. The other thing is, it's my mom's birthday today, and 2 days ago was one of my sister's birthdays. So I want to wish her a happy birthday, and also my mom today. And I think she's like, I don't know, what is she, like 56 years old? She'd laugh about that. She is another amazing woman. I know my Uncle my Uncle Kelly is watching this show as well. Just a ton of amazing people that I grew up around with work ethics since they were children, in the way that they work together, the way my grandparents raised them. So I want to wish my mom happy birthday, one of my sisters a happy birthday, and prayers to my Uncle Fred. Why did I start with that? Well, for one, they're my family, and that's what I do. But all day today, I got up early this morning. I went down to it was early for me because I was up all night again trying to finish this audio book. Good Lord, I thought writing a book was hard. Reading it out loud and trying not to screw up and going back and having to fix this stuff, it's difficult. So anyway, I got into bed about 4:30 in the morning, I think, reading this book where I just couldn't stay awake anymore. And I got up and I went to Newsmax, and we did a special that's going to be aired at 5 p.m. tomorrow. If you don't have Newsmax on your television, you can find it on newsmaxtv.com. It'll be live at 5 p.m. It'll also be aired this weekend, but I'm not sure of the show times yet. But we did an hour about Veterans Day. And I had Kitty Kelly. I had Dave Robinson on there. Israel Del Toro Jr., if you don't know who that guy is, you need to look him up. Unfortunately, we couldn't Skype with him, so we had to do a phoner with him. But he was the recipient of the Pat Tillman Award last year and was a JTAC in the military. And they're kind of like the combat ground air traffic controllers that they just can't get enough of these days. And he was in an IED explosion and was burnt over 80% of his body. So the story that he tells is very phenomenal. So I go there, I do that whole hour, and then I went over to the Sean Hannity radio show. Again, I've been on now 2 weeks in a row with Geraldo Rivera, and Geraldo was in studio today, so this was great. It was I'm telling you, people, they don't like his politics or whatever, but I'm telling you, if you got a chance to be in a room with Geraldo Rivera and Sean Hannity, now, first of all, it's kind of surreal that I'm actually me. Who am I? I'm sitting there with Sean Hannity and Geraldo Rivera. Geraldo Rivera, I've been watching that guy my entire life, and he looks like, he looks like a young macho guy, but he's in his 70s. So he's an incredible guy, and really, I'm not going to lie to you. Yeah, he's liberal, but he is a realistic thinker. You can sit down and talk to Geraldo and come up with realistic solutions on things. And by and large, the conversation that we had today was about Judge Roy Moore and the allegations that are being pushed out against him about touching a girl when she was 14 years old. It was almost 40 years ago. And it was a good conversation we had. But all day, I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about, what am I going to do on my show tonight? I'm thinking about this throughout the day. And then Louis C.K., something comes out about him. We'll talk about this in a second. And I started thinking to myself, it seems like, and you also have Anthony Weiner, who's wanting people to write him, and they report it as writing in prison. Now, I think everybody that's writing stories about Anthony Weiner, they need to kind of get this right, okay? Anthony Weiner is not in a prison. He's in a hospital. He's going to be in a hospital for 20 months. He's rich and connected, and he's in New York, so he went to a hospital. I guarantee you, anybody else that is probably watching this show, if you did the same thing he did, you're going to go to a jail, right, or prison. He should be in Rikers. He should not be in a hospital. So the more I thought about it, I thought, gosh, I need to explain and come on and talk about my Uncle Freddie and about my mom and her birthday and my sister and all my uncles and aunts and how incredible these people are, to show you the reality of what's on the other side, 180 degrees out from that. Also today, having hosted a show on Newsmax and being on Sean Hannity's radio show and coming here, I got to tell you, two things after yesterday's show, and I was kind of down and out. I mean, there's times when I do this show and it is a brain melt, because I'm not sure, like I said yesterday, who's watching and what good this show is doing a lot of times. But going to Newsmax and hosting a show today and being on Sean Hannity's radio show with Geraldo Rivera, and we're discussing things from a little bit different angles and having their respect, and also having the respect and the emails and the tweets from all the people that support this show. I'm back on fire, and it feels good because I see things that are happening. I see that it's actually touching people because, quite frankly, folks, you just cannot get the truth out there. I mean, I'll get back to this, these sickos and these pedos and stuff here in a minute, but one of the things that is a perfect example of this, I talked to a friend of mine today who ran the New York City Marathon. She comes here every year from Denmark and runs the New York City Marathon. And I've been hearing for a week now that for the first time in I don't know how long that a woman won the New York City Marathon. A United States citizen that's a woman won the New York City Marathon. And I've been seeing it reported over and over again. I could type it in, and you would see on like CNN.com, for instance, go figure, that it says woman wins New York City Marathon. Well, I told my friend that. I was like, this must be pretty incredible that a woman beat, all the male Kenyans and all these people. She goes, no, she didn't. She won her division, the women's division. It just happened to be an American woman that won it. I'm like, what? She's like, I said, no, that's not what it says. So I double checked. I pulled up on the internet, and sure enough, I look at CNN. It says, woman wins, American woman wins New York City Marathon. It didn't say anything about the fact that she won in her division. She didn't win the overall race. She didn't have the best time. Now, I'm not saying this to come down on women by any means, but I find it very interesting how media, just like they say about Anthony Weiner, he's going to prison and he wants people to write him. Anthony Weiner's not going to prison, okay? And a woman did not win the New York City Marathon this year. She won her division, and she happened to be an American. That's awesome. I don't want to take anything away from that successful achievement. But the way the media reports these things, you literally would think that she won that and that Anthony Weiner is going to go sit next to some big dude in prison where there's a good chance he's going to get the same thing that, he deserves. But neither one of those things are the case. Those are just the headlines that lead you to think that. So I come out today and I talk about my family. I talk about Fred. I talk about my mom. And it's interesting because when you juxtapose who they are and who's 180 degrees out from them, and you look at these people like C.K. Lewis, who I have not been a fan of for a long time. He's one of the first people that I actually went off on Twitter. I don't know if he ever got it, and this was a while back. He did a joke a while back saying that, and this was his joke, basically. I wish I could find it right now, but I'm not even going to say it completely like he did, but basically what he was saying was how pedophiles will put their life on the line or their careers on the line to have sex with children, and he said, wow, that must be great sex. That's what C.K. Lewis, that was his joke. All right. Absolutely disgusting. And that was on Saturday Night Live when he said that. And people laughed. Some people booed, but people laughed. And I don't think there was enough stink about that. The same thing that happens with, like, you know, a week and a half ago, we had a terrorist attack in New York City. First people in New York City that have been killed by a terrorist attack since 9/11. It's all but forgotten now. Not even a full week ago, well, maybe it's been about a week, we had this shooting in Texas. The biggest mass murder in a religious institution in the United States history. And all you got now is the big rage is not about how we can train people to be more aware and to arm themselves to defend against these types of crazies. But now everybody's talking about how USA Today was talking about how the different configurations of the AR-15 that he may have had, and how the different extensions that you could put on the bottom, that you could have a grenade launcher, that you could have a shotgun, and that you could have a chainsaw bayonet. I personally have never seen that when I was in the military. I had an M4, same weapon pretty much as an AR-15. Never saw the chainsaw bayonet, but that's all everybody's talking about now. They're not talking about, you know, could this happen again? Is this something that we should be changing our policies in churches? You're not hearing any of that stuff, none of that stuff reported. So, in Vegas attack is all but gone. They're not even reporting anything on that. Louis C.K. was the same thing. He tells this weirdo joke. Everybody was up in arms for a couple days, and then it just goes away. Nobody even talks about Bill Cosby. And this is bizarre to me, because I was raised in a day and age when, and I also belong to, you know, in the Navy, the SEAL teams, where if you do something wrong or something weird, your reputation is soiled. And there'll be guys that see you 20 years later, not realizing that, you know, you had 20 years to improve on something, or maybe that was a mistake that you made that one day. They'll still think you're the biggest turd in the world 20 years later. And you know, that's the way it sticks with you. Well, that used to be the way it was with the media. That used to be the way it was for a politician when they got caught doing something wrong, or when an actor or actress said the wrong thing, or a media personality was caught lying. But that's not the case anymore. There's no demand from the people that these people be ousted, that they be fired. Like yesterday, I talked about Mila Kunis, Ashton Kutcher's weirdo wife, and Ashton Kutcher, the weirdo, who, you know, she's been making donations to Planned Parenthood for some time now in the name of Mike Pence, and thought it was funny. So it's funny that she's paying for abortions as a joke, while her husband is going and crying crocodile tears in front of the Senate with his buddy John McCain, who's on the board of directors for his company, saying that he wants to protect children. He's got children, he's crying, all this stuff. Meanwhile, his wife is making jokes by sending money to Planned Parenthood, which I'm sure they use for abortions. So you see, there's no moral or ethical standard anymore, and the people are not enraged enough to press this stuff forward. I mean, this used to be stuff that would basically end somebody's career. We've heard nothing from Jim Beam whether or not they're going to fire her as a spokesperson. I think that they should. And it's bizarro world. So you have sickos and pedophiles. Finally, the floodgates are open, and people are starting to respond to this, and they're actually starting to say that, yes, I was molested, or this guy raped me, or whatever it is. They're starting to come out of the woodwork, and they're starting to say these things. But there's no real follow-on with any of this stuff. A lot of people are coming out, which I also don't know if listen, I've never... Two things have changed in me, not really changed, but have been affirmed in me over the past year. One is my absolute belief in the Electoral College. I used to think when I was in college and I was majoring in political science and psychology, I couldn't figure out why the Founding Fathers would have put this weird thing called the Electoral College in place. It didn't make sense to me. But this year, the Electoral College elected the president. And when I saw why that was, because it gave a voice to the rural areas, because the majority of people in this country live in the cities, and by nature, the city is going to produce more and more liberal people because they're so pushed in there that the city has more control and imposes more control. You're going to have more poverty, which means you're going to have more people that are going to be dependent. And overall, they take the guns away from people. They take the ability for people to defend themselves, and they put it in the hands of law enforcement. So that doesn't happen in the rural areas. People are much more independent, and they see things differently. The Electoral College gives those people an equal voice with the masses of population levels inside these big cities. So that was reaffirmed. The other thing that was reaffirmed in my mind, and I never really understood it, is statute of limitations. So, you know, it kind of bothered me with Bill Cosby, with all these women coming out, and they're saying, no, criminally nothing's going to happen because it's been too long. Civilly, they might be able to sue. So, that bothered me, but especially because some of these women were saying they were raped. And there are no statute of limitations for a criminal offense of rape, but there is when it comes to touching and things like that. So why do I say that my faith in statute of limitations is reaffirmed? Because 40 years later, when somebody comes up and says, at a very peculiar time, and they say, right as somebody is being elected to the Senate, yeah, that guy molested me or he touched me inappropriately. You're never going to get the full story 40 years later. And I find the credibility is diminished greatly when that happens, both of the person making the accusations and the news media and the other politicians that are going to dive headlong into trying to ruin this person's reputation. It's like a bunch of hyenas. If a lion attacks one hyena and it's dying, they can turn on that hyena and kill it. That's basically what it's like. These people are a bunch of weirdos. Although I think hyenas are amazing animals, these people are mostly weirdos. So the statute of limitations is actually very important because there wasn't 40 years ago. There wasn't internet. Not everybody had a camera, and there was diaries that people wrote in, but doesn't mean that everybody's going to keep a diary. So 40 years later, it's going to be a he said, she said kind of thing. And if it is not rape, there's going to be a statute of limitations on it. And I kind of see the importance of that now. I didn't before. So somebody over here, Mark Keller, is talking about how Herman Cain was destroyed so quickly. I agree. And they almost got Justice Clarence Thomas when he was being confirmed. Very close, very close. He almost went the way of everybody else, where he just disappeared. But Justice Thomas made it through, and he is one of the few. I don't know if Roy Moore will make it through this. I don't know. But what's interesting is I think Roy Moore is talking about one person that made an accusation 40 years ago. There's other women that have come along and said that they dated him or certain things happened, but they were between the ages of 16 and 18. And in Alabama, and actually, believe it or not, most places in this country, 16 years old is the age of consent. Now, New Jersey, I think it's 17 or 18. In New York, no, it's 18. In New York, it's 17. But most of the places around the country, 16 is the age of consent. So if they say, yes, I want to go out with you, yes, I want to make out with you, whatever, and they're 16, they can do that. So there's no real crime there. Even if it's perverted or whatever, there's no crime. So you can push those things to the side. Whether or not they happened is kind of irrelevant because he didn't break a crime. And he was in his 30s. Those girls said they were between 16 and 18. But there's one person that said she was 14. If he did this and the proof comes out that he did it, then I say, that's the end of his career. And I don't feel bad about that at all. But the problem is, over a 40-year span, it's really hard to confirm that. And I understand why some women don't come out and tell their story right away. Because probably it wouldn't do them any good in a lot of ways, and I understand that. I get it. But I have a problem with waiting until somebody is running for office and then you come out and you tell the story, because here's the facts. If you wait that long, it may derail Roy Moore's career, but it's obviously there's going to be a lot of people that will always be skeptical of this woman and her accusations. They're just going to be skeptical of it. There's nothing, because she waited 40 years. So it's an interesting dilemma. And let me read what Jeannie is saying over here. Roy Moore isn't coming just from the media's fake news. Many conservatives, including myself, have known plenty about Roy Moore for a long time. I was sick when I found out he won the GOP spot. This conservative from Alabama will not be voting for Moore. The news has no bearing on my choice. However, it would not surprise me. That's interesting. See, I'm not from there, so I don't know. Now, opposite of what Jeannie said was another individual on Twitter that follows me and follows this show, and she thought that Geraldo and I had belittled Roy Moore and that we were just out to get him because we're establishment people. Well, first of all, obviously, I don't even remember the person's name because I blocked him. I didn't block him because they wanted to argue with me or debate me. I blocked him because they came back calling me a liar. And you could watch this show every day since it started. If you're going to call me a liar, which if I'm having a counter argument and I'm seeing things based on the evidence that presented before me that it's 50-50, we don't know. That doesn't mean that I'm saying Roy Moore's a bad guy. I don't know Roy Moore. I don't live in Alabama as Jeannie does. I don't, so I can't make that statement right now until the facts come out. But just like you have your leftists that say, oh, yeah, they're freaking out, the Republicans. I'm not freaking out, and I'm not a Republican. I'm a conservative guy, but I'm actually a realist is what I am. And I'm not freaking out about it. I just want to make sure that Roy Moore is going to get a fair and balanced, not trial, there's not going to be a trial here, but he gets a fair and balanced trial in the public court. Because that is where people like Roy Moore will get crucified and their career will be over with. And we have to guard. I was talking to a friend of mine today that was sexually harassed at their work. And they came forward with it, and they were fired subsequently, which is wrong. But it was an all-male, pretty much dominated area of employment. And my thing is, what I would love to see happen is that we come up with a set of standards for how you should go about letting people know that you were sexually harassed, or that you were molested, or that you were raped. I think we leave it up to the court system and we make it up every time that it happens. And I would like to see standards in place, if not by a law, by the court of public opinion, where people say, yes, let's come up with a set of standards. If you get molested, and now, of course, we can't tell other people what to do unless we pass a law, and I would like not to pass a law. But we should have a standard of the way that people do things. If you're sexually harassed, you should take certain steps. Human resources should, across the board, all the human resources groups out there in this country should really say, yes, we accept these standards. If somebody gets sexually harassed, they go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they're not looked bad. They're not looked down upon. But look, I even know, being in the Bureau, that women can get marked. I've had people before say, watch out for her. She made a complaint against somebody for sexual harassment. Now, I've actually heard stories where women did get sexually harassed. They made the complaint, and it came back to haunt them big time. I've also heard of women that habitually complained about sexual harassment when nobody was harassing them and nobody was interested in me. Trust me on that. But yet anybody says hello to them with the wrong tone, and they're going to go level a sexual harassment complaint against you with human resources. So you got problems on both sides there. And here's the thing. Most people would think, they would say, well, one side that's victimless, the other side is a victimized crime. The woman gets harassed. She goes and tells HR about it, and then she ends up suffering, right? She's a victim. But also, on the other side, with a lot of people, women that like to go around and say, you sexually harassed me, you sexually harassed me, and they get this in their mind, they're actually victimizing people as well. So there needs to be a standards of how a set of standards of how we look at these things. And 40 years later, coming out and saying this, see, if we had a standard that when it happened, you mail a letter to yourself and you say, this happened, right? Just like if you want to get a poor man's patent. The court of public opinion should be like, and HR should be like, okay, we'll kind of accept that. And 40 years ago, this girl wrote in an envelope to herself, this guy touched my panties, did this and this, made sexual advances to me, and this is the date. And if you want to get a friend of yours to eyewitness it and say, yes, we eyewitness this, you put it in an envelope. If you don't want to go public with it, you put that in the envelope, seal it, and mail it to yourself. That way it gets an official stamp in the mail. That way you have it. Now, you see, again, I'm just free thinking here, but you see how far outside the box I think. If then 40 years later, and if that person was in politics already, you didn't feel comfortable about it, you're saying, I'm going to put this behind me, you should do that where you write it, you tell what happened. If you can get a witness, put it in the mail so it's marked, postmarked. It comes to you. Don't touch it. You keep it in a drawer somewhere or put it in a safe deposit box. Or give it to another responsible person. And then if it ever comes down the line when you say, I don't want that person in office, I don't stand for their values, and that person did something very wrong before, and you have every right to do that. But 40 years later, if you don't have some kind of standardized proof, then it just looks kind of, Gloria Allred-ish. It looks very, like the women who came out against Trump, where it didn't go anywhere. The names or the things that they said that he did were kind of like, okay, he gave you a hug and maybe, I don't know what all the thing was with Trump, but, things have changed a tremendous amount in 30, 40 years. There was a time when people, it wasn't right and it wasn't, but it wasn't looked down upon. And so I'm not justifying by any means any of these sickos or pedophiles doing what they do. But there was a time when guys were more open in the way that they were sexually advanced towards women or hitting on women or belittling women. There was a day and age when that happened and nobody said anything about it. So we should start looking for outside the box ways to become norms, social norms in this country, standard operating procedures, whatever you want to call it. You get sexually harassed, somebody touches you inappropriately, and you don't want to go to HR about it, or you don't want to go to the police because you don't want to lose your job, and you don't want to be marked as that girl, put it down, write it down, send it to yourself in the mail, or have a witness sign it if you can, and just hold on to that. I think that's something that that we could do. Does that make sense to anybody? I'm not seeing a lot of hearts or thumbs up in this. I'd like to know what people think about this. But the point is, and with what I'm getting at with all this stuff is I'm not trying to think outside the box and fix that problem, but it's very interesting when we look at the problem that is arising with the Hollywood types, the Weinstein types, the Charlie Sheen types, and when you look at what happens in politics, it's very interesting. It's very interesting because a lot of the times when it comes to actors and musicians and such, the hammer does not fall as fast as it does in politics. And in politics, a lot of the times it falls so fast that the truth never gets a chance to come out. And unfortunately, I'm kind of siding with Geraldo here. Whether you like Roy Moore or not, I just have a feeling this is going to be a bad day for him. A bad day. I don't know. I don't know if that's the case or not, but it appears as though that might be the case. Now, before I start talking about this Sicko Louis C.K., if you haven't shared this show and you're on Facebook, make sure that you share it right now. And if you're on Twitter, make sure you retweet it. Like my page on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, and go and subscribe to my YouTube page. That way we build the numbers up on there, because I don't know, you know, I'll get like thousands of views on Facebook and Twitter, and then, you know, like tonight I have 30 people watching over on YouTube. So interesting. Why don't we go to the A block, and I'm going to cover Louis C.K. and what I don't like about him, and then we'll just go from there. How many of you are prepared for an incident like this? Get my new book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and I will teach you to think like an attacker so you can truly defend yourself. Don't just react, act. Available for pre-order now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Sheep No More. Get it. All right. Having some issues with my earpiece over here on my right ear. It's weird if the ears are not exactly the same in these earbuds, it throws you all out of whack. So, Louis C.K. So I started talking about him a little bit ago, and that sick joke that he told about children and about pedophiles. But basically, there's a couple of comedians, female comedians, that say they were with him in the Chicago hotel room in 2002. And they said that, and there's another woman that it happened to when they were on the phone. I think all in all, there's like five women that are coming out and saying this stuff, where basically what happened was, long story short, he says, come on up to my room. Another Harvey Weinstein type. Come on up to my room. Let's have some drinks and talk and stuff. And they go in there, and they're not. It's not like they've been in there for a long period of time, right? They walk in. The girls still have their jackets on. They're not even completely sitting down at the couch. And this guy unzips his pants and starts taking care of himself right there. So it's not like he invited them up. They had some drinks. Things got romantic. This and that happened. It's like, hey, come on up to my hotel room. The door goes ka-tunk. He turns around and unzips his pants and starts going after it. So that's what it sounds like is happening here. And it doesn't surprise me. The other woman said that happened when they were on the phone. It doesn't surprise me, you know, because I think he's a weirdo. And I know that's hard to believe that a comedian's a weirdo. There seems to be a plethora of comedians that are weirdos. I know a lot of comedians and met a lot of comedians who are great people. And a lot of times, believe it or not, a tortured soul can be one of the funniest people that you'll ever meet. I know when we were in, and I was, when I was talking to Israel Del Toro today, and Israel, again, was burnt over 80% of his body. He was, I don't know if they're going to air this or not on Newsmax. If they don't, I'll tell you the story now. He said that when he was in, I think it was Bethesda, but it was definitely one of the hospitals, and they were in the burn unit, they had a cookout. And so instead of saying, do you want your hamburger rare, medium, or well done, they just were naming the hamburgers based on the guys who were burnt to certain levels. So if you wanted a really well done burger, you would say, yeah, give me a Melvin, who was burnt over like 90% of his body. If you wanted it medium, you would say, yeah, give me an Israel. So that's, you see, hard times difficult times can make real comedy come out of a person. I mean, there were times when we were still training, as miserable as can be, we were laughing and having the best time. Hell Week to me was one of the best times I've ever had in my life. The most hard times, difficult time, pure suck factor time. However, it was an amazing time because we laughed and did some crazy stuff, and it was just some of that stuff is stuck in my head forever. And it's the same thing with comedians. But there's also a lot of very strange people in comedy, and that's because of these tortured souls. So I think Louis C.K. is a weirdo. I think he's a sicko. I almost thought he was a pedophile after he told that joke on Saturday Night Live. But as you can see, a lot of these people follow a very similar category. And this is something that law enforcement should also look at. Whether it's Judge Roy Moore or Louis C.K. or anybody that's been accused of certain things, if you go back and you look at the dynamics of their life and the behavior that they have shown throughout their lifetime, you'll start to develop a picture, especially if they're a public figure. You'll start to develop a picture of behavior that is not of the nefarious type, but what you find is people who do nefarious things will have a certain type, a lot of the times, of very similar behavior. You know, maybe they're a sexual predator, but they're also known as a constant liar. I'm trying to remember that word it's called. So they consistently and constantly lie. And so there's behaviors that will go hand in hand with the nefarious person is here, and when they're not being nefarious, they have these types of behaviors. And so I think that that is something that law enforcement should look at. It's also something that I haven't read that in a book, and it wasn't in any of my psychology classes, but it is things that people can start to take notice. If you're a female and you meet some weird people or some weird guy, and then and you look at his behavior when he's acting weird and his behavior when he's not compulsive liar. That's the word I was looking for. And you look and you say, okay, this guy's a compulsive liar, but he's also a pervert. And then you meet somebody down the line and you say, I don't know if this person's telling me all the truth. And it comes out that they're this person who's lying all the time. You may want to take a step back and monitor the rest of their behavior, because they may actually be a pervert as well. You see that I'm trying to figure out if there's standards, ways that we can look at individuals and say, yes, these behaviors go together, for instance. So I don't know why I keep forgetting that word compulsive. I got a pen in my hand. I might as well write that down. Which, you know, a lot of comedians are compulsive liars. That's why they tell such good jokes. So, interesting. So, with Louis C.K., I've known that I just felt that this guy was a pervert for a long time. I've here and Jeremy Piven is another guy who's being accused. And Jeremy Piven, I'm sure you guys know who this guy is. See if you can see this picture of him. That's not Jeremy Piven. I don't know what happened to Jeremy Piven there. He was there for a second. So Jeremy Piven is an actor. You'd know who he is if I showed you his face. But he was accused of sexual assault allegations, but now he's saying that he wants to take a lie detector test to see if to prove that it's not true. Now, if he does that and he passes, then good for him. But I would. I like the spirit of what he's saying. I didn't do it. I'll take a lie detector test. That's more along the lines of what somebody who's innocent might do. But he needs to be very careful, because lie detectors are things that can put you in the hurt locker as well if you don't know how lie detectors work. Yes, that's my email. But I'm looking at the news today, and it's phenomenal as I stroll down through the news. This is on foxnews.com, and you probably won't be able to see this real well, but I'm going to scroll down. So starting right here, and I just want you to listen to this. So Texas boy 15 arrested in murder of Dollar General clerk. That's a 15-year-old boy, okay? Substitute teacher, 23, physically removed from class over sex allegation with teen student. I am seeing this more and more. I don't know if you've noticed this, but I don't think I ever remember seeing this many female perverts going after young students in my lifetime. I mean, literally, I think the amount that you've seen this year already is more than I've ever seen in my entire lifetime reported on the news. It seems like it's every week with these women. Nurse may have killed more than 100 patients, prosecutors say. What is going on in this country? There's nothing here that says anything about guns. Well, this dad fired a gun to stop a 17-year-old daughter from being attempted kidnappers. I guess he stopped the kidnappers, but this stuff doesn't involve guns. Pervert. We don't know about him. Killer, nurse. Louis C.K., pervert. Anthony Weiner, pervert. Oh, this guy. Don't even get me started on this guy. I haven't done a story on him on purpose because I don't want to really bolster him up. I think if people didn't give him press, he would go away. But he's the Drexel professor that blames whiteness for the Texas shooting. Every couple of weeks he's coming out talking about something about white privilege. As you can see, he's about as white bread as you could ever get, and an idiot. Where'd we go here? Let's see here. There's just a lot. There's a lot of stuff in the news. It's a lot of little stuff, and this is what happens typically when you are in between big news cycles. Like O.J. Simpson, it was booted out of a Las Vegas hotel after a drunken disturbance. It's because the guy's a criminal. Going to prison is like getting a master's degree in criminology. What do they think is going to happen? He's going to go to college and come out a choir boy? That's not going to happen. Now I'm going to pull up CNN real quick. Again, if you haven't shared yet this show, if you haven't retweeted it, make sure that you do so. And let's see how many people we got on Twitter. We're doing pretty good tonight. And then make sure you go to my YouTube page and subscribe to it. So I'm going to pull up CNN now. That was Fox. So let's see what's happening here. Well, this is interesting because they got Gretchen Carlson, who I think is an amazing person, is on CNN right now talking about, I'm sure, about this type of stuff. But they also have Anita Hill there. So they have Gretchen Carlson, who's completely credible, and Anita Hill, who is not credible at all after what we saw. Louis C.K., they're talking about him. CNN is the weirdest place. They have something here. Why men use masturbation to harass women? It's because they're perverts, and it's because they're I don't know, because they're perverts. So I'm not going to get into that. I'm sure there's a psychological disorder that specifically is why they do that. So when I'm on, if you know that I'm on and you're watching the show, why do you guys text me? So, oh, I got it. Okay, I'm seeing here. So somebody here that does not want to be named says that they had, now again, this is coming from somebody that I know. I've never heard this story before. They said that they had a state senator put a roofie or something, some drug in their drink, and the only way that she got away was by violently throwing up on him. Please share this tonight. Interesting. That's very interesting. And I'm sorry that that happened to you. And if you ever want to go public with that, let me know. We'll take care of that for you. I'm just looking at these. I'm looking at CNN now. I'm looking at what they have up here. So, look, here's the bottom line on all this stuff. I mean, this is the dangerous thing about talking about this stuff. I'm not kidding you. It's like sexual allegations everywhere on all these websites. And the Air Force Academy, here's another thing. What is going on with these academies? They had, in the Air Force Academy, it was a widely publicized incident, this is off of CNN.com, which appeared to have been a hate crime, turned out to have been a hoax. The incident in question occurred in late October at the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs when someone wrote ugly graffiti outside the dorm room of black cadets in Academy Prep School, scrawling messages including "Go home, N-word." In response, the head of the academy, Lieutenant General J. Silveria, summoned everyone there for a stirring speech defending tolerance, this and that. The school revealed this week that the offensive graffiti was written by an African-American cadet. First of all, when our government is using the words African-American, it drives me crazy because that is a stupid term. Again, the government is defining somebody by the color of their skin. It's just, if you don't have to, look, if you're going to call somebody the color of skin, we need to get out the Behr paint scale, and that's the paint thing that you see at Home Depot, so we can get the true colors of people, right? Like, I think I'm like an olive color. I'm sure they had some kind of color for that. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm digressing, but they're saying basically that that graffiti was put up there by another black cadet, and one of the students was supposed to have targeted. So the person did it themselves. The individual admitted responsibility, has received administrative punishment, and is no longer attending the preparatory school, according to the academy. So, what's interesting about this story, as I'm looking at it again, is not about this sick problem of somebody doing this. The story is about, I know you guys can't see any of that. The story is about, does it change the overall picture of hate crime? This wasn't a hate crime. This was a lie. Maybe they should start looking at the reality of how many hate crimes are actually not hate crimes. How about that? But that's not what this story is about, and that's not what CNN is going to write about. Am I all over the place today? Is everybody getting this? I'm kind of all over the place today. Here's what it comes down to, folks. It's difficult to talk about sexual assault and allegations like are being made against Roy Moore or some of these other people. It's not difficult for me to talk about it about Anthony Weiner and Louis C.K. because they're both perverts. They've shown us that they're perverts through their behavior, and they're also kind of wacky. So it's easy to talk about those. Not really allegations in the case of Weiner, still allegations in the case of C.K. Lewis, but he did make that perverted joke in the past and showed no remorse for that. So, but when you look at Roy Moore and you have something that's 40 years old and it just happens to come out, she decides to bring it out right as he is in the critical time of his political career, I have to stop and pause until we get more evidence. And that can be taken both ways. People say, well, you're letting that guy off the hook, and he's a pervert. Well, you don't know if he's a pervert. But they say, well, he's a pervert, and you're letting him off the hook. Well, that's not what's happening. I need to have more evidence in this. I don't know his behaviors like I've seen displayed by C.K. Lewis and by some of these other people. Harvey Weinstein, for instance, went around showing his behavior constantly. On the other side of that, people are going to say, you're condemning Roy Moore and he didn't do anything wrong. Well, I'm not condemning him. I haven't said he did anything wrong. I'm saying we need to wait for the evidence that people want to see. And I've said this for a long time now, since I was on Bill O'Reilly's show with Eric Bowling a year or two ago, where we were talking about police cams or body cameras. The fact is, people will see what they want to see. They will hear what they want to hear. And in reality, it's just like the Bible says: they will see, but they will not understand. They will hear, but they listen, but they will not hear, or not conceive of what I think is how it went. So, this country, basically the world, in a lot of ways, they've gotten themselves into this predicament because we don't work together. We don't come up with standard operating procedures. We don't have talks with our children. In some cases, there's no family unit. HR and agencies and in businesses, they don't have standard operating procedures of how somebody does something wrong to you, you have to report it here. If you don't report it in this span of time, we're not going to entertain that. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but maybe they could have some standards that don't necessarily force people to come out. But if it's over a period of time and there's no evidence that was shown, and somebody comes forward when this boss is at a critical venture, and you say, when did that happen? They say 5 years ago. They could say, well, that is our statute of limitations is 3 years, or a month or a year. You didn't come out and say anything about it. So you're going to have to go file a police report or do a civil report because HR, it's not in our policy. Now, if it was rape or something, I could see something different. Anyway, what I'm getting at here is it's very difficult to talk about this stuff with people because people have such incredibly hard emotions about this, as which they should. But as like everything else in this day and age, they are sided upon liberal or conservative, and they just go after each other based on narratives and not by what's effective or what the truth is most of the time. Am I rambling? I'm trying not to ramble. So I think that's it. I think I'm going to go to the Truth Zone. I got to take Rico for a walk. I got to continue to do this book. I got to thank everybody for the donations. I've said this before, but I want to make sure everybody knows that the book will not be out until December 12th. It's not. Nobody's getting advance copies. If you paid $50 to the GoFundMe page, you're going to get a book. We're going to wait for them to come to us, sign them, and then send them back out. So it's going to take a little bit of time. If you ordered your book, though, it's going to ship December 12th. Unless you ordered it, unless you paid $50 to the GoFundMe page. I want to thank everybody for the support they've given the GoFundMe page this week. We've raised it's about $1,500, and that is spectacular. We need to keep this going right there. GoFund.me/The Experts Roadshow. Again, there's like, all in all, there's like 70,000 people that follow me in social media. If every single person sent $20 in, it's going to make a this show is going to be good to go over the next year. But the problem is, if 1 or 2 people or even 5 send $20, it doesn't do anything. This doesn't propel the show forward. It maintains what we have. But if we could get everybody together to do a minimal effort, we would get maximum results. We just have to have everybody there. So thank you for that. And let's see what else here. Charlene, I guess I can say this because you wrote it on here. It says, you were harassed for a year by the president of Behringer Wines. I went to HR and you got fired. See, that's what I'm talking about. HR should not be set up to protect the executives, which often it is. HR should be set up so that it is there to protect the accuser and get to the truth. And that only happens if you have standard operating procedures. Let me see here. So let me just say real quick, somebody put a tribute up here. Gilbert, you put a tribute up here to Robert Lavoy Finicum. First off, I don't believe he was murdered. I believe he did a very stupid act and he got shot. I supported those people in what they were doing and the cause that they were out there for. This has nothing to do with the news we're talking about, folks. I supported them being out there and the reasons that they were out there. I did not support the way they went about it. They could have occupied that place without weapons, gotten themselves arrested like everybody else does that's protesting, and furthered that cause. When they showed up with the guns and had their children there, they put law enforcement in a very bad predicament. They were also doing that under administration that wasn't going to work, and it didn't. And when they got in a high-speed chase, it went south. And that's what happens when, one, you have a good cause and a ill-planned mission. It's going to come back to haunt you. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's military or if you're protesting. Secondly, if you bring guns and children into a place, that's like going to a bar and getting drunk and getting into a fight. Even if you're justified, you're guilty. So I'll leave this up. But I don't support this. I don't feel like he was murdered. I feel like they got themselves into a bad predicament because of the tactics that they chose to employ, and Finicum got killed as a result of it. And according to the briefs that I saw, even amongst the different law enforcement agencies that just clearly do not like each other, they all agreed that he had a weapon. I know there's people saying that he didn't have a weapon. There's also law enforcement say that they didn't know, but he was the way he wouldn't get his hands out. I've seen the video. The bottom line with that whole story is, and I've never purposely talked about it, is that you don't bring children and guns into an environment, first and foremost, that had little to do with their own land right there. I understand why they were there about the land grabs and all these things, but occupying that property without weapons, they would have gotten a tremendous amount of attention. But they did it with weapons, and they had their kids there, and it ended badly. Got to think these things through, especially in this day and age, this political day and age. So, also, and I hear what you're saying there, John, that the feds knew he was, I think you're saying en route. It turned it to encountering. He was en route to turn himself into the local sheriff. I get it, but when you run from the cops and, again, there's children involved and guns, things are going to end badly. I say the same thing about people like the guy who got shot in the back in South Carolina by that dirty cop, right? That cop murdered that individual. But here's the facts. If that guy had never wrestled with the cop in the first place, because he got pulled over because I think it was because of taillights or something, it came out that he had unpaid child support, so he's going to get arrested. He ended up fighting with the cop, running from the cop. Then they got in a wrestling match. Then they got up, they chased him some more, and he shoots the guy in the back. That was murder. Plain and simple. That was a bad shoot. That was a guy that should not have been shot. And that cop murdered that guy. That was homicide. However, that guy would still be alive had he not gone down the road of running from the cop and wrestling with the cop. So he is to blame for putting himself into that position where he got himself killed. But the cop is guilty of murder. So that's the way I feel about that. Richard Rayburn says, a tribute to my parents who have been married for 71 years, and thank you to my dad for his World War II service. Wow. That is amazing. A World War II vet, and they've been married for 71 years. Can you imagine living with somebody for 71 years? Wow. That's a long time. They must be two of the coolest people in the world, or they're two of the biggest badasses and nobody mess with them, and then they find solace in each other's toughness. I don't know which one it is. That's amazing. All right. Can you see Rico, please? I'm going to have to wake him up. Hold on 1 second here. Stand by. Why's your tongue sticking up there? Here he is, folks. Rico, I like to call him Baby Ray. Now, don't follow you. Oh, you screwed it up. Put those back up there. I like to call him Baby Ray. Let me get rid of this thing here. There he is. He's even got his tongue sticking out. Why's your tongue sticking out? Sweet Baby Ray. Look at that. You have no clue what's going on, do you? Bloop. All right, come here. So there he is. He's a little sore today. He's got some arthritis, but I saw a couple of dogs out there today that had arthritis as well as we were walking around earlier. So that's, you know, it happens. How about you put your paws up there, and we'll go to the Truth Zone. What do you say? Let me plug my headset back in. Can I do that? Well, don't push the mic away. Hold on. Where'd we go here? How this mic gets wound up all over the place, I'll never know. There it is. Okay. What are you doing there, dog? This is real TV. All right. We good? Just push that mouse out of the way. There you go. Sit there. Let's go to the Truth Zone. How many of you are prepared for an incident like this? Get my new book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and I will teach you to think like an attacker so you can truly defend yourself. Don't just react, act. Available for pre-order now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Sheep No More. Get it. You better sit up, dog. Sit up. He's like a kid. He has no bones in his body. He wants to just fall over. Like when you tell him, you want to go for a run? No, look at him. There he goes. That means he wants to get down. All right, there you go. You sit down there. Old dog. All right. I'm going to end the show the way I started the show, in the best way that could be is by talking about the good alls. Move over so I can scoot forward. And a lot of the times he sits right down there, right next to where my feet are. So my mom's side of the family, the Goodalls and the Jameses. Again, my grandma's maiden name was Jessie Nadine James. That's where my dog Jessie got her name from. And by the way, Jessie's birthday is going to be, she's in heaven now, but her birthday is Veterans Day. Go figure. What an incredible dog. That's her right here. That's her right there. That's Rico when he was in his prime. Look at that. And that's yours truly without a beard when I was in the FBI Academy. So her birthday is on Saturday. So we'll be wishing her a happy birthday. And we'll talk about Veterans Day tomorrow when we do the Friday night toast. But again, I wanted to say, please pray for my Uncle Freddie, for those prayer warriors out there. I think Freddie has a direct line with God, as we all do. It's called Jesus. So Freddie's pretty in tune with that. But your prayers are always welcome. And Remember, folks, it breaks my heart what Charlene Welch was saying about getting fired after that. Folks, if you work in an environment where you see somebody that is sexually harassing people and you're a male, you can put a stop to that. Remember, there are power in numbers. I talk about this all the time with this show. Minimal effort, maximum results. If you see somebody that's weird, that's perverted, that's doing stuff, whether it be at work or out in the open, and you're afraid that you'll get fired, go get 5 more people to come with you. Go get 10 more people and go approach HR and say you will not stand for this, or else you're going to go to the press with it. I mean, I've seen power in numbers. I've seen it work. If that's the way you have to fight this, then do it. Now, if you work in an environment, I'm going to give you the hard truth right now. If you're a female and you work in an environment, or if you're a male and you work in an environment where it's an oppressive environment, I want you to do the tactical thing. If it's oppressive in a sexual way, if it's oppressive in just like Jeff Ringel was, my boss in the FBI, what I want you to do is I want you to sit down and calculate tactically what is best for you, not what is just, not what is going to get them because they deserve to be gotten. You need to look out for yourself, and that's a hard pill to swallow. I'm not telling people not to file complaints. I'm not telling people to walk away from these things. What I'm telling you to do is take as much of the emotion out of it as you can. And if simply getting out of there allows you to spread your wings and fly again, get out of there. If you feel like going after them and taking them down, try not to do it by yourself. And that's the reality, folks. I'll stand with you. Rico will stand with you. Listen, 5 p.m. tomorrow on Newsmax, the Veteran Special, and I'm hosting the Will Cow Majority on Sirius XM Patriot Channel 125 tomorrow, 12 to 3 Eastern Standard Time. This is The Experts. I'm Jonathan Gillum. The truth has arrived. How many of you are prepared for an incident like this? Get my new book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and I will teach you to think like an attacker so you can truly defend yourself. Don't just react, act. Available for pre-order now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Sheep No More. Get it.